Welcome to the Maasto Fitness podcast. Today in episode 33, we are talking all about breathing. So this is a quick hit podcast where we keep them short and to the point, focusing on the things you can do off the bike to race faster and safer. At Maasto Fitness, we work with racers remotely in the real world. Many have a life full of commitments and don't have a lot of time to train on the bike or ride. We provide training off the bike, so days on the bike, whether riding or racing, are faster and safer. And so, like I said, today we are talking all about breathing. This is one that comes up a lot for us at Maasto Fitness during our monthly calls. And there's some good techniques and things we can implement off the bike and on the bike to have us breathing better, which is just going to make us stronger, more efficient, get more out of our training, get more of our racing, and be able to be more focused while we're racing as well. So, the first thing I'll say is we're going to go into some kind of somewhat advanced techniques and things you can do on the bike. But I think most importantly, it's important to just make note that breathing is important. A lot of racers just hold their breaths. You can kind of check next time you're on the bike. You might find that you're actually holding your breath a lot more than you think during technical sections, during tough things. You're holding your breath and then you find yourself gasping for air a couple seconds later after that intense session or intense section. So just to back it up before we get into the really kind of like things we can do that make it paced breathing or really time the breathing is just breathing itself. So make sure just to check in on yourself next time you're on the bike and make sure you are breathing. And then as you kind of get used to constantly checking in and making sure you're breathing, then you can kind of implement some of this other stuff would be my suggestion. Now, going to the next step about breathing, there are kind of two types of breathing, breathing with your chest or breathing with your diaphragm. So real quick, as you're listening to this, if you breathe with your chest, when you breathe in, your chest moves in and out. When you breathe with your diaphragm, your belly moves in and out. Now, ideally, we want to breathe with our belly. Now, that's kind of like a thing that people sometimes self-consciously avoid is breathing with their belly because it pushes your stomach out, right? But that's the way the human body is designed. So when we breathe, ideally, little movement with the chest. When we breathe with our chest, we're tightening neck muscles, vocal cords, and it can create a little bit of a stress reflex in our body. When we breathe with our stomach or our diaphragm, pushing our stomach out, that's the way our body's designed to work. That's the way the most air can get in and out of our lungs. That's the most efficient way, the way our body's designed. So think about that also when you're just breathing. You can think pushing that diaphragm down or pushing your stomach out when you breathe in. It's really funny right now as I'm just going through saying these things. I keep inadvertently wanting to like do examples of it, even though you can't see the lower half of my body. But yeah, so make sure you're breathing with your diaphragm, breathing with your belly at all times. Good thing to think about when you're training off the bike, strength, yoga, uh, flexibility, mobility, endurance, aerobic work, or when you're on the bike think about that diaphragm breathing as well. That's the first two steps. So just make sure you're breathing and make sure you're breathing with your diaphragm, and then we'll dive deeper into it here now. So breathing really helps maintain endurance and focus during the race. Prevents fatigue and utilizes oxygen delivery to muscles. So that's a big thing with the way our system works, getting fresh oxygen to muscles and nutrients we need to breathe. So the more we hold our breath, the less nutrients and fresh oxygen we're getting to those working muscles. So basically, by breathing, we're reducing arm pump. We're able to deliver more oxygen to the arms. Simple as that. And it also helps regulate heart rate and you kind of manage stress during high pressure moments, which when you're racing, at least to me, it's all high pressure moment. So it can just help regulate everything as well when you're breathing. Now, like I said, diaphragm breathing is really the best. We can get a bigger, fuller breath where chest breathing is going to be more shallow. And when you're doing this, now nasal constriction is definitely a factor, but it's a good practice to practice breathing through your nose. Something you can work on. I know for me during really high intense moments, it's impossible to breathe through my nose, but during more steady state type of training, like off the bike when I'm doing like a zone two kind of all day effort, I can breathe through my nose, but high effort or racing on my bike, I can't breathe through my nose, but it's a good practice to work on. And the benefits, it just helps increased oxygen intake and reduces tension in the upper body muscles. So think about that diaphragm breathing through your nose whenever possible. It's going to help set up a better technique for you. And then just in terms about breathing, there's a couple things we can do with breathing that can help us just kind of regulate stress before a race. So one thing you can do is before a race, when your nerves are kind of getting up there and it's getting close to the race time, and you're literally just letting time pass as you wait for the time that you've got everything prepped and you're headed to the gate or the starting line, is you can do 4-4-4. So take inhale for 4 counts, relax for 4 counts, exhale for 4 counts, and then repeat that cycle. So that helps promote relaxation and control, and it really helps calm the nerves, and lower heart rate. So that's one thing you can do is that 4-4-4 with breathing, and that also, once again, as we're getting closer to the race, helps kind of set up the right technique or mindset for your breathing already before the race starts. And that's something that I like to do personally racing enduros this year. Close to the start, I like to just do that breathing routine and just relax for a minute before my number is up and I gotta go. Now at Maasto Fitness, one thing we do with every warm up for strength training is we have notes in there on breathing and how we suggest to breathe to help set up these practices multiple times a week, with just getting in a good rhythm for breathing during strength, which should translate to any sport, on the bike, off the bike, whatever it may be. And so with each warm up, we have like a paced breathing routine that before strength, we have athletes do a warm up, whether it's a row, a bike, or a run. And with that, we have a suggestion of how they should have their cadence with their breath with that warm up routine to help be efficient, help really utilize fresh oxygen to their body, and then, like I said, help just set up that consistent routine that they can implement into any sport. So I think that's really important. That breathing, you can't just say, oh, I'm just going to do it on the bike, or when I'm racing, I got to remember to do it. It's something just like any routine. We need to do it every day to make sure that we're utilizing it to our absolute best and then able to implement it across all sports. And then at some point, it just becomes natural. We're not constantly thinking about breathing. We can focus on all the other things, like while we're racing, and know that our breathing is kind of locked down because it's something we've implemented every day through all forms of training. Now, we'll get a little bit more into the advanced side of breathing, which I think this is definitely a challenge for a lot of us, especially if you don't get to spend a lot of time on the bike. Our time on the bike is valuable for a lot of us. We're often, have so much going on. We don't get nearly as many ride days as we want, and maybe don't race as much as we want. So this is a little bit more advanced, but I still think good things that we can implement and think about. So ideally, we want to synchronize our breathing with our body movements. That's kind of like what I said with a warm-up routine we do at Maasto Fitness, making sure we're inhaling and exhaling at the right moments. So, the importance of exhaling is ideally you want to exhale at moments where the pressure is pushing you down. It's almost easier to do it that way. So like when you're landing can help reduce tension and shock. You're kind of using gravity to your advantage as you land, exhale, and you're just kind of working with the bike and gravity and everything all at once. And same with in the air, if possible, if you're someone who spends a lot of time in the air and is racing MX, you can really relax in the air and relax your muscles and for a second and really get in a solid breath in the air. That's something I think if you follow enough professional motocrossers, you'll see many of them say that, that's a big thing with some of the jumps. That's literally the only time they have to relax because everything else is so intense and the track is so rough. It's hard to get in like a solid full breath, but you can do that in the air. And then keep in mind that breathing does combat arm pump. Every time we breathe, we get that fresh, oxygen-rich nutrients to our muscles. And so when we're breathing, it's going to help decrease the chance of arm pump. And really, I know I keep going back to this, but using the diaphragm is so important whenever we're breathing, because we're going to get a much more quality breath We're going to use the muscles in our chest the way they're designed to be used, and we're going to get more oxygen to those working muscles. And now, like I said, doing that pre-race warm-up routine with breathing is important. At Maasto Fitness, we have a pre-race um, warm-up routine for our body. You implement the breathing as well. I think you're putting yourself in a really good spot. And then always, of course, there's always recovery breathing. And that's something you can think about when you're done with an exercise, when you're even done with a really intense section in a race, recovery breathing. And that's really just focusing on getting quality breath in. We work with a couple hard enduro racers, and this is something that's really common for them to do recovery breathing because they basically will have to do something very intense, very physical, and then get to the next bottleneck and they are forced to take a break. So they're always doing the recovery breathing, really working on slow exhales to really activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which basically just calms the body. So, when they get to those bottlenecks, they can really shut off the bike, grab a water bottle, focus on breathing, get the parasympathetic nervous system just calm down a little bit, help relax the body before the next effort or opportunity comes up to do something really hard. So keep that in mind with your breathing. Sometimes in races, especially if you're an off-road racer, you get into these bottlenecks, you can't do anything, you're revving your motor, you're yelling. Take a second and do some of that recovery breathing, and just really focus on those deep, slow exhales. And it's going to help you stay calmer in the moment and help you be able to be ready when the opportunity comes, whether that bottleneck comes up or that person you've been trying to get around, maybe a lapper or something gets out of the way. So, simply put, practice breathing in races, out of races. I think that's my main takeaway for the day. Like I said, at Maasto Fitness, we've got the routines incorporated into workouts, but something you should be doing all the time. You can think about it right now while you're listening to this about that diaphragm breathing, pushing your stomach out. Next time you're on the bike, think about when it's really intense, which I know it's hard. We're already managing a lot of things: balance, throttle control, brake, reaction to the terrain, trying to read what's going on way up in front of us, right in front of us. But when it's really intense, if you can think for a quick second, let one more thought in. Am I breathing? Am I holding my breath right now? It's really intense. If you're holding your breath, you're definitely not doing everything you could to get the most out of yourself and be able to perform the highest. So keep that in mind as well with breathing. And that's all I've got this week for you on breathing. I know it's something that I'm sure maybe many racers have heard about or thought about, but if we really start to implement it, I really think we start to see some benefits. And it's one of those little 1% things we can do that just helps tie everything together, whether on the bike or off the bike. And so that's all I've got for us this week. Keep in mind, at Maasto Fitness, we build strength, endurance, and mobility training for racers, plus have tons of hydration and nutrition guides. If you want to give it a try, send me a message on Instagram at Maasto Fitness, and I'll hook you up with a free week of our single jump training program for you to try. No credit card, no information besides your email and your name, and I'll get you in there for you to test it out. And that's it for this week, guys. See you next one.